In previous videos, I've talked about what happened to every Moto2 and Moto3 champion after they graduated from the smaller classes. But what happens when there's nowhere left to graduate to? Once you've already reached the mountaintop and won a MotoGP World Championship, what comes next? Instead of looking at how a rider's career went after they won a championship, we're going to look at that, but also how their career went after they left motorcycle racing altogether. My name is B, this is the Beehive Paddock, and today, we're looking at what happened to the best of the best once they reached the mountaintop. What happened to every Premier Class Grand Prix motorcycle racing world champion after they won their first title. Mark my words, we're both going to be so sick of that sound by the end of this video. By the time the FIM launched the Grand Prix Motorcycle Racing World Championship in 1949, Leslie Graham was already towards the end of his career. He had been racing since 1929, with a short break to serve as a Royal Air Force pilot during World War II, and then returning to racing and becoming an AJS Works rider. His first World Championship campaign would be with the British Mark, and he would win the first ever 500cc World Championship on the back of 2 wins and a second place aboard his AJS Porcupine, perhaps the best name of any World Championship winning bike. The following year, he would find a race win, but would lose out on the season to Gilera's Umberto Masetti and a rising star named Geoff Duke. Similar to many riders of his era, he competed in various non-championship events as well throughout the year. In Graham's case, this included the International 6 Days Trial, the oldest off-road event on the FIM calendar, and often considered to be one of the most difficult motorcycling events in the world. On the Grand Prix side of things, he was becoming frustrated with AJS's lack of development, so when he was approached by Count Domenicalo Augusta to help develop his racing machines, he was happy to join up with the Italian factory. In 1951, he wouldn't find success with the machines in either the 125 or 500cc classes. Despite the bikes producing plenty of power, their handling was downright abysmal. He did find a race win in the 350s aboard a Velocetti. The lack of development that had caused him to leave AJS was not present here though, and in 1952, the team's efforts would begin to bear fruit. He would finish in second place at the Senior TT at the Isle of Man, and he would win the final 2 rounds of the season in the Premier Class to round off the year. MV's mechanical progress, combined with his dominant performance in international events, made Graham the title favorite heading into the 1953 season. He would win his first ever Isle of Man TT, the lightweight TT, but sadly, in the Senior TT at the same meeting, his forks would lock while fully compressed at the bottom of Bray Hill, causing him to lose control and crash, killing him instantly. The MV team retired from competition for the rest of the year in his honor, and the Leslie Graham Memorial Shelter was constructed in 1955. The 1950 500cc world champion was Gilera's Umberto Masetti, who would claim Italy's first riders and constructors championships in the Premier Class. He wouldn't be able to repeat the accomplishment the next year, but in 1952 would become the first multiple-time 500cc champion with 2 wins in the Netherlands and Belgium. 1953 would see injuries keep him out of all but a single 250cc race at Monza, and 1954 would see him again only compete at a Nations Grand Prix. Up through 1954, he also won 6 national championships in Italy as well. He would move to MV Augusta in 1955 and would make sporadic appearances for the team until 1958, including securing his 6th and final Grand Prix win at the 1955 Nations Grand Prix. His final Grand Prix entries were in 1962 and 1963 at the 250cc Argentine Grand Prix, where he secured podiums both times. He would be called out to the inaugural running of the Imola 200 a decade later in 1972, and while he was there, he would perform some test laps on the bikes, publicly declaring his desire to race again at age 46. Unfortunately, no team showed any real interest. He would disappear from motorcycle racing again until 1997, when he would find a position as a manager at Aprilia. He passed away in 2006 at age 80. The first true superstar of Grand Prix motorcycle racing. Geoff Duke won his first World Championships in 1951, winning both the 500cc and 350cc championships and becoming the first rider to secure championships in 2 classes in a single season. He was a Works Norton rider and would win them a second 350 title the following year, but he was poached from the British factory by Gilera, whose bike had just won the title with Masetti, and he would go on to win the next 3 500cc championships in a row with the Italian Mark. In 1955, he would support a privateer riders' strike in Assen, where they would demand fairer pay, and as a result of this, he was banned for the start of the 1956 season, and ruined his chances of getting a 4th consecutive title. He was briefly credited with the first ever 100-mile-per-hour lap around the Isle of Man, before this was revoked under dubious circumstances. Regardless, this came in one of the 6 TT victories that he accumulated throughout his career. He would continue racing in the World Championship until 1959, finishing his career with 33 wins and 50 podiums. He would give Formula 1 a try, entering the 1961 German Grand Prix but being unable to actually make the start. His only notable Formula 1 race was the 1961 Cannonloppet, where he would race against former arch-rival John Surtees. Unfortunately, he would crash out. In 1963, he would form Duke Scuderia, a racing team comprised of Derek Minter and John Hartle, riding the 1957 Geleras with some updated parts, intending to take down Mike Hailwood and his MV Augusta. While both riders were successful in finding multiple podiums, the only thing they successfully stopped Hailwood from doing was securing a perfect season, with John Hartle being the only rider that year to take a win off Hailwood. Scuderia Duke was disbanded at the end of the 1963 season, and Geoff Duke moved on to other ventures. He worked to develop race bikes for Royal Enfield in 1964, and in 1965 served as a course designer for the International 6 Days Trials, held on the Isle of Man, which he had called home. He also served as clerk of the course to the ACU. In 2002, he was named a MotoGP legend, and in 2003, a corner on the Snaefell Mountain course was named in his honor. He passed away in 2015. John Surtees famously won his first title in his first full season in the Premier Class. He would win the first 3 rounds of the season before breaking his arm and missing the rest of the year, but that was enough to get the job done. His 1957 season was plagued by retirements, but 1958 would start a dominant streak for the MV Augusta rider. He would go undefeated in 1958 in both the 350 and 500 classes, but would miss the Swiss Grand Prix. The next year, he wouldn't leave anything on the table, going perfect in both classes. The first ever perfect seasons in Grand Prix motorcycle racing history. 1960 was less perfect, but still an easy double championship for Surtees. He won 32 out of 39 races in those seasons, and he became the first rider to win 3 successive senior TTs at the Isle of Man. While racing in the motorcycle championship full-time, he would also race part-time for Lotus in Formula 1 in 1960. Coming second in the British Grand Prix. He would switch to Formula 1 full-time in 1961. He would find 2 second places with Lola and would sign with Ferrari in 1963, winning his first Grand Prix in Germany that year and finishing 4th in the championship. The following season, in 1964, he would secure 6 podiums, including 2 wins, and would become the first and only Formula 1 and Motorcycle Grand Prix World Champion. He also finished 3rd in the 24-hour of Le Mans that year. In 1965, he would have a near-fatal crash, but would return as a championship favorite in 1966. Midway through the season, though, he would have a falling out with Ferrari and would quit the team, signing with Maserati for the rest of the year and finishing 2nd in the championship despite the move. 1966 was also the inaugural year of the Can-Am Cup, which was essentially cars with no rules whatsoever, and Surtees, driving for Lola, would become the first ever champion, an accomplishment of his that I feel often flies under the radar. He would continue with Formula 1 for a number of years, winning his final Grand Prix in 1967, securing his final podium in 1969, and starting his final race in 1972. He also competed in many non-championship Formula 1 events, the British Saloon Cars Championship, and the European Formula 2 Championship. Surtees formed the Surtees Racing Organization in 1970, competing in Formula 1, Formula 2, and Formula 5000, with the team's greatest success being a 1972 European Formula 2 Championship. He would disband the team in 1978, and he would start a motorcycle shop in England. He is a member of the International Motorsports Hall of Fame, a MotoGP legend, a Commander of the Order of the British Empire. He was awarded the Seagrave Trophy, and given an honorary doctorate of engineering from Oxford for his contributions to motorsport. Libero Liberati secured his first and only world title in 1957, winning 4 out of 6 races for Gelera. Celebrating his win, Gelera sent him to many events in South America during the off-season, where he won 4 races. Unfortunately for Liberati, he would be robbed of a chance at a repeat, as all of the Italian manufacturers minus MV chose to pull out of the 1958 season with no warning, leaving him without a ride. He would race on a 250cc Moto Marini machine the next year in 1959 to little success, and would participate in some Italian races aboard his Gelera in 1961, coming close to a national title but losing out to newer machinery. In 1962, Gilera announced that they would be returning to the World Championship, and Liberati began training again to make his grand return to the world stage. Unfortunately, during his training, he would suffer a fatal accident while training on State Road 209, and a plaque in his honor now marks the location of the accident, and he was honored with the naming of Libero Liberati Stadium in his home city of Terni, Italy. Gary Hocking was a Rhodesian rider, and in 1961 became the first non-Italian or British rider to win a Premier Class title. He scored the maximum number of points allowed by the system to secure the 1961 World Championship, and also secured the 350 title in the same year. Hocking, like Surtees before him, was an MV Agusta rider, and was expected to do very well the following year. However, at the opening round, his close friend Tom Phillis died during the Isle of Man TT. Hocking would win the senior TT, but would announce his immediate retirement and a move to auto racing, which he felt would be safer and would help extend his racing career. In a tragic twist of fate, Hocking was killed later that year while training for the Natal Grand Prix. After his death, the Newport and Gwent Motor Club awarded the Gary Hocking Trophy annually for an outstanding achiever in motorsports. Mike Hailwood is up next, and this will be one of the longer entries on the list. He won the 500cc title in his first full season on an MV Agusta in 1962, and then would do it 3 more times in a row. He disagreed with the overbearing policies of Count Agusta though, and would leave for Honda in 1966. He would win more lightweight championships with them, eventually matching Carlo Ubbiali with 9 world titles across all classes, the most ever at the time. He would leave the championship along with Honda after 1967. Having come second in his final 2 years of Premier Class competition. But he didn't leave before delivering a stunning Isle of Man performance in that year, where he had a fierce battle with Giacomo Agostini, which led to him producing one of the best laps in motorcycle racing history, lapping the Snaefell Mountain course at an average speed of 108.77 miles per hour, an outright lap speed record that would stand for 8 years, the longest a single record ever stood without any TT meetings being cancelled. In 1968, Honda would not compete in the championship, but anticipating a potential return, they paid Hailwood not to ride for anyone else, and he rode Hondas at various non-championship events that year as well. Even prior to his exit from the Grand Prix Championship, Hailwood had been dabbling in 4-wheeled racing. He raced most of the 1965 Formula 1 season for Lotus, which didn't go particularly well, but he would also go on to finish 3rd in the 1969 Le Mans 24 Hours race. He would also find success in Formula 5000. Winning 7 races across 3 seasons and finishing 2nd in the championship in 1961, racing for Team Surtees. He would also be Team Surtees' greatest success when he would win the 1972 Formula 2 European Championship with the team. He also secured a 2nd place at the Italian Formula 1 Grand Prix that year, his best result in the Formula 1 class. He would continue racing in Formula 1 for 2 more seasons, finding 1 more podium in 1974, before an injury at the Nürburgring forced him into retirement from racing. Hailwood would live a quiet life for a few years, but in 1977, he started making appearances at events again. His appearance at various motorcycle meetings led to some speculation of a major return, and in 1978, it would happen. He would return to the place where he had found the most success, the Isle of Man. It's rare for a motorcycle racing world champion's most famous race to come from outside of the championship, but in 1978, at the age of 38, and after an 11-year hiatus from any major motorcycling event, Mike Hailwood won the Formula 1 TT at the Isle of Man aboard a Ducati 900 SS, whose red and green livery became an instant classic the moment he crossed the finish line. This also technically made him that year's Formula 1 TT world champion, as in the first 2 seasons of the event, the Isle of Man was the only event in the championship. He rode in a few more events before returning to the TT one final time in 1979, this time aboard a Suzuki RG500, a 2-stroke, something he had no real experience with, and he won the senior TT on it. He would also finish only 2 seconds behind first place in the Unlimited Classic. This brought his final TT win count up to 14, a number that wouldn't be eclipsed until Joey Dunlop took it away. After that, he retired for real this time, and he opened a motorcycle dealership. Tragically, 2 years later, he was killed in a traffic accident, with a lorry making an illegal U-turn and striking his car. He received the Seagrave Trophy in 1979, is a member of the MotoGP Hall of Fame, and had a section of the Isle of Man TT course named after him. By the numbers, Giacomo Agostini is by far the most successful Grand Prix motorcycle racer of all time. He won his first title in his second year of full-time Premier Class racing and just never stopped. He would win again in 1967 and would proceed to win the 350 and 500cc titles without fail for the next 5 seasons straight, including perfect seasons in both classes in 1968 and going undefeated in both classes between 1968 and 1970. Although he did miss 6 races in that time. In 1972, his close friend Gilberto Parlati died at the Isle of Man TT, and he became one of the strongest dissenters of the event, claiming it was too dangerous for riders to be forced to compete in it, and he refused to ride there ever again, becoming a leader among a movement of riders who were advocating for increased safety. It was only in 1973, when MV Agusta hired Phil Reed and put Agostini on a smaller displacement bike more akin to an upgraded 350 than a full 500, that he finally relinquished his title, although he did still win the 350s that year. Understandably, he would leave MV the following season, moving to Yamaha instead. He would again win the 350cc championship in his first year on the Japanese bike, but would struggle in the 500 class due to technical failures and a broken collarbone, and Phil Reed would take his second Premier Class title in a row. He would finally beat Phil Reed, who was still on an MV, ending the Italian manufacturer's 16-year winning streak, and he would take Yamaha's first Premier Class title, as well as the first ever Premier Class title aboard a 2-stroke machine, making him one of only 2 riders to ever win a Premier Class championship on a 2-stroke and 4-stroke bike. In 1976, he would leave Yamaha, and would ride on both MVs and Suzukis. Agostini would secure the final wins for MV, and the final win by a 4-stroke in the 500 class that year. In 1977, he would return to Yamaha, and after managing only 3 podiums, would choose to retire, having amassed 122 wins and 15 world titles. After retiring from bikes, Agostini decided to check back in on an old career prospect which he had turned down over a decade prior. See, in the break between the 1966 and 67 seasons, Agostini did a Formula 1 test for Ferrari, and was personally invited by the man Enzo Ferrari himself to compete for his team, on the condition that he stop racing motorcycles. As we know, Agostini declined. He would return to cars after his motorcycle career ended though, competing in the European Formula 2 Championship in 1978, before moving on to British Formula 1 for 2 seasons, finding 7 podiums and finishing 5th in the championship in 1980. He took 1981 off, before returning to the motorcycle paddock as Marlboro Yamaha team manager in 1982, a partnership which would last until 1990. During this time, the team won 3 Constructors' Championships and 3 Riders' Championships with Eddie Lawson. In 1990, Yamaha decided to officially support Team Roberts instead, and Agostini would receive less support in 90 and 91. He was called to manage the Cagiva team in 1992, and would manage the team until they withdrew from competition in 1994, overseeing both of their 500cc wins. He would field a single 250cc Honda bike in 1995 for Doriano Romboni, who would secure a single win, but would withdraw Team Agostini from competition after that. Ago has since found a career in commentating, and he has made many appearances in classic bike events, and is a frequent presence in the paddock to this day. Agostini is a MotoGP legend, has a plaque on the Italian Walk of Fame, received gold and silver medals and the gold collar for sporting merit, is a commander of the Order of Merit for the Italian Republic, as well as a member of the Laureus Committee for Sport. He has also starred in several films and documentaries, and has released several books about his life. Needless to say, he is one of the most accomplished riders of all time. Now, it's time to talk about one of the sport's most controversial figures, Phil Reed. Phil Reed had already achieved both controversial and legendary status before he won his first 500cc title in 1973, having won 5 titles in the 125 and 250 classes, with one of those being perceived as a robbery from beloved rider and teammate Bill Ivey. As we discussed, in 1973, he accepted a 500cc ride for MV Agusta. We've already talked about how the next couple seasons went. He would win the next 2 titles before losing to Agostini in 1975. So let's fast forward past his second championship and final year with MV Agusta to 1976, when he would choose to ride a privateer Suzuki, only competing in 3 rounds but finding 2 podiums in those races. After that, he retired from Grand Prix racing. Reed would find himself at the center of controversy yet again the following year when he would choose to attend the Isle of Man. While he and Agostini had battled each other for the title 3 years in a row, they had stood together on one topic: the Isle of Man. Reed was another and potentially even more outspoken critic of the TT's safety problems than Agostini was. Reed and his fellow protesters were successful in removing the Isle of Man from the calendar in 1977. This was something that was seen as blasphemous by many fans of the sport. The TT had been a traditional mainstay and often the opening round of the championship since its debut in 1949. So when Phil Reed made an appearance at the race's first ever non-championship running in 1977, it sparked a vitriolic response from some fans. He would manage to find even more controversy at the meeting itself. In the Formula 1 TT, he would win the race after it was stopped short just after he had taken the lead. Similarly to Hailwood, this would make Phil Reed the inaugural Formula 1 TT champion, and he would go on to win the senior TT as well, bringing his career tally to 8 TT wins. Speaking of Hailwood, he would race against Hailwood the following year during his return, sort of seen as the villain to Hailwood's hero. And of course he lost that race. He would make some more appearances before retiring from racing in 1982, choosing to focus on selling motorcycle gear and running a Honda dealership. He would return to the racing scene in the 1990s and would continue to race classic motorcycles into his later years, eventually passing away at the age of 83 in 2022. Reed is a MotoGP legend and a member of the Order of the British Empire for services to motorcycle racing. Barry Sheene won his first title in 1976 with Heron Suzuki, and would immediately come back and defend his title successfully the following year. Looking for a three-peat, he was the favorite to win in 1978 as well. But an already established rival of his was coming to the world stage for the first time. In addition to the World Championship, Sheene also competed in the Transatlantic Trophy, an annual 6-race contest between the best British and American riders. And he had already competed against American Kenny Roberts 4 times. Whether or not he knew to be cautious of the American rider didn't matter in the end, as after a tough battle, Roberts would take the title in his rookie year, dethroning Sheene. Despite their on-track rivalry, the two worked together off the track to lead a riders' revolt in 1979, threatening to leave the World Championship and start their own series, garnering the support of many top riders and race organizers. While this didn't end up panning out, the fact that they got so close scared the FIM very badly, and they would give the riders more pay and pave the way for eventual safety improvements. 1979 also marked the end of Sheene's time as a Suzuki rider, and for the turn of the decade in the 1980s, he would move to Yamaha. Yamaha had held a grudge against Sheene for some comments he had made against them earlier in his career, so they withheld their best machinery for Roberts. Sheene would only secure 1 win over the next 2 seasons, but in 1982 received top-of-the-line Yamaha machinery for the first time. With this, he would secure podiums at every round he competed in. Heading to the British Grand Prix, he was tied for second in the championship. But in an unofficial practice, he would suffer a 260 km/h collision with Patrick Igua that would shatter both of his legs. His recovery from this injury was considered miraculous, with the doctor who performed his operation comparing his bones after the accident to eggshells. He would race for 2 more seasons with the Suzuki machine, but would never regain his old form, only finding 1 more podium in that time. In 1985, he would race for Team Toyota Great Britain in the British Saloon Car Championships, finding 2 podiums and finishing the series 6th in his class. He found a successful career in TV afterwards, serving as a TV presenter and commentator for a variety of motorsports, primarily the Grand Prix Motorcycle Racing Championship where he made his name. He also starred as himself in the 1984 movie Space Riders. Later in life, he became involved in historic motorcycle racing. He would pass away in 2003 from esophageal cancer. Sheene was named to the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, received the Seagrave Trophy 2 times, and was named to the MotoGP Legends Hall of Fame. He had a corner in Brands Hatch named after him, and the Barry Sheene Medal is now an annual award given out in V8 supercars. The riders of the 70s and 80s are really in a sweet spot. The World Championship had evolved into enough of an institution that they could find long careers associated with it afterwards, and they've had plenty of time to build those careers. So a lot of the riders from this time are going to be the longest segments in this video. Kenny Roberts is no exception. He became the 500cc champion in his rookie season, using his dirt tracking experience to wrangle the wild 2-strokes at the time, and he would attract Americans to the World Championship like it was a plate full of donuts. As mentioned in Barry Sheene's segment, Roberts led the Riders' Revolt, which led to increases in rider pay and safety regulations. He would go back-to-back in 1979, and after the Riders' Revolt in 1980, would win the championship again, completing a hat trick of titles in his first 3 seasons of competition. To this day, the only rider ever to do so. He would also lead Team USA to a victory in that year's Transatlantic Trophy matches. Roberts would stay with Yamaha for another 3 seasons, battling at the front every year, but failing to ever win another title. He would also continue to ride international events, including the Daytona 200 and Suzuka 8 Hours in 84 and 85. After his career ended, unlike many riders who pursued other forms of racing, he would choose to go straight into Grand Prix team management. He would field the 250cc team in 1984 consisting of Alan Carter and Wayne Rainey. In 1986, he would move to the 500s, and in 1990 would secure the funding of Marlboro as well as the backing of Yamaha to become the official factory team. Rainey would win the 500cc title for the squad that year, and fellow American John Kaczynski would win the 250s for Team Roberts as well. Rainey would win 2 more titles for the team before an accident cut his career short. Roberts would remain with Yamaha until 1997, where he would shock the world by choosing to start producing his own motorcycles. He had hoped to use a loophole that allowed 3-cylinder bikes to be a lighter minimum weight to build a competitive machine, but his timing was as bad as it possibly could have. By the time he had a 2-stroke bike that was ready to be competitive, the series had already set its sights on a 4-stroke future. During the end of the 2-stroke era, Roberts' son Kenny Roberts Jr. also won a world championship, making them the first and so far only father-son world championship duo. The KR3 bike did manage a pole position with Jeremy McWilliams at the helm in 2002, but Roberts would instead develop a 5-cylinder 4-stroke called the KR5. The team would continue on with support from Proton, KTM, and then Honda. Both of Roberts' sons, Kenny Jr. and Curtis, would ride for his team at different points. He was forced to pull out of Grand Prix racing in 2007 due to a lack of funding. Recently, Roberts has returned to the role of team management. He reformed Team Roberts this year to field 3-time AMA flat track singles champion Cody Kopp in the Moto America Talent Cup. Roberts is a member of the AMA, American Motorsports, International Motorsports, and MotoGP Halls of Fame. Alright, buckle your seatbelts. This is a wild one. Marco Lucchinelli won the 1981 500cc title aboard a Suzuki RG500, which was an independent bike. He would accept a ride aboard a factory Honda machine the following year, but would struggle to find his previous form with the bike. After a lackluster 2-year stint left him with only 3 podiums, he would leave for Cagiva, and this went about as poorly as it possibly could have. He would leave the team after 2 years and would race at selected events on 2 and 4 wheels over the next couple of years, driving a Formula 3000 car to 11th in Italy, and riding a Ducati 851 to a win in the 1987 Daytona Battle of the Twins. This would be the beginning of a partnership with Ducati, whom he would race for in World Superbike in 1988 and 1989, finding 2 wins and 4 podiums, and a 5th in the championship in 1988. After that, he would move into the role of Ducati's team manager. This included managing Raymond Roche during his 1990 World Superbike Championship. The motorcycle racing world was shocked when, in 1991, he was arrested on suspicion of taking part in an international drug smuggling operation, alongside 4 other Italians and 6 Peruvians, 2 of whom had supplied Lucchinelli with 200 grams of cocaine. During his arrest, Lucchinelli was heard shouting that he was a drug addict but denied being a drug smuggler. Lucchinelli was acquitted of the more serious charges, but still received 5 years in jail for possession. During his time in jail, he fought against his drug addiction, and upon his release, went into the media side of the racing business. Lucchinelli had a penchant for being an entertainer. He's been described as the closest thing the Grand Prix Championship ever had to a real rock star, and he even had a music catalog to boot. Yes, Lucchinelli released music, some of which is actually good. I added a couple songs to my playlist while I was researching for this video. He even made an appearance as a guest at the 1982 San Remo Music Festival, performing alongside acts like the Bee Gees, Kiss, America, Hall & Oates, and the Village People. After his time in prison, he would briefly return to racing, entering but failing to start the 1,000 kilometers of Monza and driving the opening round of the 1998 International Sport Racing Series, finishing 6th. He would find a true home as a commentator for motorcycle racing and is still a regular at many Grands Prix and other international events. Lucchinelli is a MotoGP legend and received the Gold Collar for sporting merit. In 1982, Franco Uncini achieved a feat that few others have, winning a Premier Class title aboard a satellite bike, which would probably have been more impressive if Marco Lucchinelli didn't do it the year before him. The following year, Uncini had an underwhelming start to the season, managing consistent top 5s but no podiums. In Assen, he would suffer a severe accident, being hit by Wayne Gardner and falling into a coma. He would make a recovery and would race for 2 more years, but never found his pre-accident form, rarely finishing in the point-scoring places. He would initially find a role as a team manager in World Superbike, managing the Ducati Corsa team in 1991 after Lucchinelli. After this, he would move to a position as the rider safety representative at the IRTA. He would hold this position for 20 years until in 2013 he was given the role of the FIM's Grand Prix Safety Officer, a title which he would hold for another 10 years, being in charge of crucial decisions regarding rider safety. He would retire from his post in 2022. Since then, he reports that he's been collaborating with multiple circuit design companies. Uncini is a MotoGP legend and received the gold collar for sporting merit. Perhaps the world champion who has become the most infamous to modern fans in recent years, Freddie Spencer won his first 500cc title aboard a Honda in 1983. In 1984, Spencer and the brand new NSR 500 didn't exactly get along, and injuries and mechanical issues would prevent him from mounting a full-on charge for the title. But in 1985, he was back and better than ever, winning the Daytona 200 and going on to win both the 500cc and 250cc titles in the same year, becoming the last rider to win the Premier Class title and another title in the same season. Spencer would come down with a nasty virus at the end of the year, and upon his return, discovered that he had developed carpal tunnel syndrome. He would never again lead another Grand Prix. He made an attempt to return in 1989 with Agostini Yamaha, but only managed a best of 5th. 3 more race starts in 1993 marked the end of his Grand Prix career. Despite this, he still raced bikes, moving to AMA Superbike, where he had found great success early in his career, and would find 3 race wins after his return. He would also do some rides in World Superbike for Ducati in 1995. Spencer would open Freddie Spencer's high-performance riding school in Las Vegas, Nevada, and would run it until 2008. During this time, he also provided commentary on motorcycle racing for the Speed Channel TV network, although perhaps what new fans know him best for was his role as head of MotoGP Stewards Panel from 2009 to 2024, which, as with any refereeing or stewardship, came with some levels of controversy. Spencer is an inductee in the AMA, American Motorsports, Louisiana, and MotoGP Halls of Fame. Eddie Lawson was the next American to take the crown, winning the 500cc title in 1984, and he would prove to be the most successful of all the Yankees. He would lose out to Spencer in 85 and would spend 86 through 88 battling with Wayne Gardner, perhaps the fiercest of his many rivals during the time. He would get the better of Gardner in 86 and 88, so it came as a shock to the racing world when he announced that he would be leaving Yamaha, who he had won 3 titles with, to become Gardner's teammate at Honda. Many thought he had just gift-wrapped the title for Gardner, but he would prove everyone wrong by winning it again in 1989, becoming the first rider to ever win back-to-back championships on different machines. He went back to Yamaha for a year and also won the Suzuka 8 Hours endurance race that season for them. After a single season marred by injury, he moved to Cagiva Corsa, where he finished his career by scoring the manufacturer their first ever Grand Prix win at the Hungaroring in 1992, becoming one of only 5 riders to ever win with 3 brands in the Premier Class, and retiring 3rd of all time in Premier Class wins. He wouldn't race in the World Championship anymore, but he still won the Daytona 200 in 1993, his second win at the event. He moved over to open wheel racing in America, racing Indy Lights in 1993 and 1994, with his career highlight being a win in Cleveland in the latter season. He raced in the Indy PPG World Series in 1996. He would go on to race 250cc supercarts and enjoys racing historic vehicles. He's a member of the MotoGP, American Motorsports, and Motorcycle Halls of Fame. Lawson's chief rival Wayne Gardner may have lost to him in 86 and 88, but he got his 500cc title in 1987. He would continue with Honda for the rest of his career, pushing Lawson again in 88, but struggling with injuries for most of the seasons that would follow. Despite injuries hindering his championships, he would win the Suzuka 8 Hours race in 1991 and 1992, coupled with 2 previous wins at the event, bringing his total to 4. He would retire at the end of the 1992 season, but would keep around the paddock, notably helping fellow Australian rider Daryl Beattie at the start of his career. Gardner, like many before him, chose to pursue auto racing, and had dabbled in it briefly during his Grand Prix motorcycle career as well, entering a round of the Australian Drivers' World Championship but being unable to start after a crash in practice. He would go on to have a prolific auto career spanning 10 years, racing in Australian and German touring cars, the All Japan GT Championship, and the V8 Supercars Championship. His career highlights include 2 third-place finishes at the Bathurst 1000, a pole position at the same event, and a first in class and 3rd overall at the 1993 Bathurst 12 Hours, as well as 2 wins in the Japanese GT Championship. He also entered the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1998 with Philippe Gauche and Didier Derodigues, but their car suffered a mechanical failure after just 155 laps. He still makes appearances in the Grand Prix paddock and at various classic bike events, and his sons Remy and Luca are both motorcycle racers as well, with Remy being a Moto2 world champion and riding for the Yamaha team in World Superbike. Gardner is a recipient of the Australia Sports member of the Australian Sports Hall of Fame, as well as the Order of Australia, and the main straight at the Phillip Island Circuit is named after him. Wayne Rainey won his first title in 1990 riding for Roberts Yamaha, beating fellow American Kevin Schwantz for the title. The two would battle again closely over the next 2 years, Rainey on his Yamaha and Schwantz aboard his Suzuki, with Rainey emerging victorious both times. By this point, Rainey had established himself as one of the most promising talents the championship had ever seen. 3 titles in his first 6 years of Grand Prix racing. Sadly, at Misano in 1993, while leading the championship by 11 points over Schwantz, Rainey would suffer an accident which would leave him paralyzed from the chest down, ending his career instantly. Rainey would soon after decide to start his own team, fielding Yamahas in the 250 and then the 500cc classes from 1995 to 1998, and taking over the role of official Yamaha team after Roberts parted ways with them to make his own bikes. Notable riders who rode for Team Rainey include Tetsuya Harada, Norick Abe, Loris Capirossi, Kenny Roberts Jr., and Sete Gibernau. Not ready to give up racing, he would turn to a specially made 250cc superkart, where he would race with fellow world champion and close friend Eddie Lawson. Rainey remained closely involved in motorcycle racing though, particularly in America, and in 2014, after a series of particularly poor decisions from the Daytona Motorsports Group, control over the AMA Superbike Championship was handed to Rainey. Thus, Rainey ushered in the Moto America era, which is still the current era of American road racing. Rainey has worked hard to transform the series into something as close to respectable as American motorsports can be, with a strong focus on bringing the series to international standards and raising the next generation of American international superstars, including the introduction of the Moto American Talent Cup this year, part of the Road to MotoGP program. Rainey is a MotoGP legend, member of both the AMA and International Motorsports Hall of Fame, and has a turn at the Laguna Seca International Circuit named after him. Kevin Schwantz won his first and only 500cc championship in 1993, but with his friend and arch rival Wayne Rainey having been forced to retire from injury, and he himself beginning to see the toll the sport was taking on his body, he wasn't able to push himself as far as he had before. He would stay in the sport for another full season, but 3 rounds into 1995, after a conversation with Rainey, he walked away and never came back. But he wasn't done racing by any means, instead going to NASCAR Australia, which apparently used to be a thing, before racing in the NASCAR Busch Series, America's second-tier NASCAR circuit. He would compete in the series for 2 years, finding 2 8th-place finishes as his career bests, and ran some other 4-wheeled racing events in the 90s. Since then, he has worked to promote American racing, opening a motorcycle riding school, and being one of the co-designers of the Circuit of the Americas. After a 20-year hiatus, he would return to major motorcycle racing in 2013, when he was convinced by former Suzuka 8 Hours teammate Yukio Kageyama to return to the endurance race. The two, alongside Noriyuki Haga, would secure 3rd place at the most competitive endurance race on the calendar, with Schwantz being age 49 at the time, an absolutely legendary achievement. Schwantz is a MotoGP legend, AMA Hall of Fame member, and was the first rider in the sport's history to have his number retired by the FIM. Mick Doohan won his first title in 1994, and he decided that he rather liked doing that. He didn't particularly want to stop doing it, so he kept winning it, 5 times in a row, utterly dominating the 1990s and etching his name into history as one of the greatest riders of all time. He was the clear favorite heading into the 1999 season as well, but sadly, during the Spanish round, he would suffer a career-ending injury, breaking both of his legs badly and announcing his retirement from racing. He would continue with Honda as a racing advisor, most famously helping Valentino Rossi in his rookie season in the 500s. Doohan, like many other riders on this list, also dabbled in auto racing. Before his injury in 1998, he got to test a Williams F1 car, and crashed it into a guardrail. He drove a Mercedes AMG in the 2001 Targa Tasmanian Rally, but would crash out on day 3. His son, Jack Doohan, would end up becoming a prolific auto racer, and made his Formula 1 debut this season with Alpine, although seems like he's not gonna be finishing the season with them. And in what I am fairly sure is a unique achievement among all of these riders, he designed his own roller coaster. He designed Mick Doohan's Moto Coaster for Dream World in Gold Coast, Australia. Doohan is a member of the Order of Australia, recipient of an Australian Sports Medal, Australian Sports Hall of Fame member, received the Gold Coast Key to the City. He's an Australian Sports Hall of Fame inductee, has a corner at Phillip Island named after him, and was named one of the 150 Icons of Queensland in 2009 for their sesquicentennial celebration. The first Spanish champion in Premier Class history, Alex Criville took the 500cc title in 1999 after his teammate Doohan's accident. He was favored to do so again in 2000, but an unexpectedly bad NSR 500 left him unable to compete, and he had a similarly tough season in 2001. He chose not to return to Honda for 2002 and was in talks with Aprilia and Deonti and Yamaha for a potential ride in the first year of MotoGP, but he also had persistent health issues affecting him. He had been dealing with dizziness and fainting spells as far back as 1998, and it was becoming an increasing concern. After meeting with a neurologist, he was informed it wasn't anything serious or life-threatening on his own, but was advised to retire from motorcycle racing. I would imagine that dizziness and fainting spells at 200 miles an hour is probably not a great combination. As such, he made the decision to retire. He would find a job as a commentator for the Spanish media, and has since provided Spanish MotoGP commentary and race analysis. He also competed in the European Equestrian Endurance Championship, which I think is a first for former MotoGP champions, so that's pretty neat. He has received the silver and gold medals from the Spanish Royal Order of Sporting Merit. Kenny Roberts Jr. made history in the year 2000 by being the second half of the first ever father-son world championship duo. Of course, he was a great rider. Unfortunately, he was racing against perhaps the best ever. Valentino Rossi took the title easily in 2001, and Roberts would spend the next few years struggling to develop a four-stroke Suzuki. In 2006, he moved to his father's team, riding a Roberts bike with Honda engines, and found 2 podiums, including one at the iconic 2006 Portuguese Grand Prix. 2007 saw the series formula change to 800cc bikes, and Honda was too focused on developing their factory team to help Team Roberts, leaving Roberts Jr. to struggle, scoring only 4 points in the first 7 rounds before handing the reins over to his brother Curtis. And after that, he just left. As a world champion, he probably could have found any number of jobs he wanted around the paddock, but he didn't want them. He just went and enjoyed life with his family. He's a brand ambassador for Suzuki and can occasionally be seen with his father and other former world champions, but for the most part he just keeps to himself and goes on ski trips, which honestly is really respectable. I could realistically make an entire video dedicated to Valentino Rossi's career after MotoGP, and it's only been 4 years. Rossi won his first title in the final season of the 500cc two-strokes in 2001, winning the Suzuka 8 Hours that same year. He would then go on to win the first 4 MotoGP titles on a 4-stroke, becoming just the second rider to win a Premier Class title on a 2-stroke and a 4-stroke, and the only rider to win championships in 4 different classes. Sounds like a pretty good career, right? Yeah, he raced for 15 more years after that. Generously, he would take a couple years off from being world champion before winning again in 2008 and 2009 on the 800cc MotoGP machines. After these titles, he would move to Ducati, and would struggle to compete aboard the bike. I mean, by world champion standards. He still found 3 podiums, but he would move back to Yamaha in 2013 and would find his form again quickly, winning the Dutch GT and finishing second in the championship 3 years in a row between 2014 and 2016. He would find his final win in 2017 at the Dutch GT, and his final podium would come in 2020 in the Andalusian Grand Prix. In 2021, he moved to Petronas Yamaha, his first time on a satellite team in his 22nd Premier Class season, and he would have his farewell tour. He has by far the longest career in the sport's history, and I have had to abbreviate it a lot. 115 wins, over 6,000 career points, 9 titles. Alright, now let's talk about his career outside of motorcycle. Roberts has been competing in auto racing since before his 500cc debut, making appearances at the Monza Rally almost every year from 1998 to 2018, and holds the record for the most wins at the event of anyone, with 7. He famously tested a Ferrari Formula 1 car several times and was allegedly offered an F1 seat if he wanted it, eerily similar to Giacomo Agostini. However, it is only since he retired from MotoGP that his auto racing career has fully kicked off. He has competed in the GT World Endurance Challenge, Endurance and Sprint Cup since 2022, and for the past 2 years has competed in the World Endurance Championship and Intercontinental GT Challenge. He has achieved some good results in major events, 3 podiums in the Gulf 12 Hours and a second place in the Bathurst 12 Hours, as well as a win in the 2023 Le Mans Cup. In 2024, he entered the 24 Hours of Le Mans, but recorded a DNF after only 109 laps. In addition to his motorcycle and auto racing careers, he has also been a team owner. He formed the VR46 Riding Academy, a riding school focused on finding, training, and promoting young Italian motorcycling talent. They have historically fielded teams in Moto3, Moto2, and currently have a team in MotoGP. Previous Grand Prix winners for VR46 include Andrea Migno, Celestino Vietti, Romano Fenati, Luca Marini, Marco Bezzecchi, and Francesco Bagnaia. I would also be remiss not to mention the 100 Kilometer of Champions, an annual dirt tracking event at Rossi's ranch in Tavullia, which attracts some of the top talent from across the motorcycling world. Rossi can frequently be seen in the MotoGP paddock today, as well as making appearances at a variety of events. He is a MotoGP legend, two-time recipient of the Laureus Award, recipient of the FIM Lifetime Achievement Award, and was granted the key of the city to his hometown of Tavullia. It wouldn't be until 2006 that the MotoGP class got its second world champion. American Nicky Hayden became the last American rider to date to win a world championship in any class, doing so aboard a Repsol Honda. He would stay with the team for 2 more seasons, but he felt he was being ignored and his teammate Danny Pedrosa was making all the development choices. So he left for Ducati in 2009. He would find decent results, but would never return to true championship form. Despite this, he had a long career, staying with Ducati through 2013 before moving back to Honda as part of the Aspar team for 2014. He would finish 4th in the Open class that season, despite missing several rounds due to surgeries to fix a wrist injury incurred at the Spanish Grand Prix. He would return in 2015 aboard Honda's new Open class bike, the RC213 VRS, but failed to find the points in most races. He moved to World Superbike for the 2016 season, finishing 5th in his debut season with a win and 4 podiums, and would serve as a replacement rider at 2 rounds in MotoGP. In 2017 he continued with the team, but midway through the season, on a day off in Rimini, Italy, Hayden was struck by a driver while aboard his bicycle, resulting in severe injuries which he succumbed to a few days later and passed away. Hayden was honored extensively after his death, with the AMA renaming the Horizon Award giving to outstanding young riders after him. Turn 18 at COTA was renamed Hayden Hill, he received a sculpture and day of recognition in his hometown, and the AMA would bypass the 5-year waiting period to induct him into their Hall of Fame just a single year after his passing. Casey Stoner won his and Ducati's first championship in 2007. He would stay with the Bologna brand until 2010, finding consistent wins and podiums, but not another title for the Italian manufacturer. In 2011 he switched to Honda, and he had a stellar season, never finishing off the podium with only 1 retirement, winning his 2nd title in dominant fashion. 2012 saw a similarly great start for Stoner, but a crash in Indianapolis would require ankle surgery, ruling him out of contention. During the season he announced he would be retiring at the end of that year, citing no longer enjoying racing and wanting to get away from the political nature of modern MotoGP. Later on, Stoner would reveal that he was suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome and severe anxiety and depression, potentially linked to the illness. Stoner would become a test rider for Honda until 2016 and would compete in the Dunlop Series for V8 Supercars in Australia, finishing 18th out of 40 in the standings with a best result of 5th. In 2015 he returned to motorcycle racing, competing in the Suzuka 8 Hours for HRC alongside Takumi Takahashi and Michael Vandermark. While leading the race, Stoner would crash due to a throttle malfunction, and the damage was too great for the bike to re-enter the race. After leaving Honda he would become a test rider for Ducati. While serving as a test rider, Stoner was heavily considered by both manufacturers for MotoGP replacement rides, but ultimately it never worked out due to not having a bike ready or Stoner not being in proper physical condition for a full race. He has done commentary work for his home Grand Prix at Phillip Island and has expressed interest in becoming more involved in the racing world again once his CFS has become more manageable. He was named 2008's Young Australian of the Year, is a member of the Order of Australia and the Australian Sports Hall of Fame, and Turn 3 at Phillip Island is named the Stoner Corner. Jorge Lorenzo won the World Championship with Yamaha in 2010. He would stay with the team for another 6 seasons, proving to be one of the few riders in his era able to compete at the top. He would end up winning 2 more titles in 2012 and 2015, developing a fierce rivalry with his teammate Valentino Rossi after he had returned from Ducati. Lorenzo himself would leave for Ducati in 2017, and would spend a season adapting. He would somewhat return to form in 2018, winning 3 races and securing a P2. He would then switch to Honda in 2019, but at the Dutch TT he would suffer a heavy crash. Upon returning, he had found that the crash had affected his ability to give 100% effort on the track, as he had developed a fear of another crash seriously injuring. Because of this, he would decide to retire from full-time racing. He was contracted as a test rider for Yamaha in 2020, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, no wildcards would run in races. He reportedly engaged in talks to ride for Ducati in 2021, but ended up deciding against it and officially endorsed Francesco Bagnaia as his replacement. Pretty good endorsement from Lorenzo if you ask me. In 2022, Lorenzo was hired by DAZN to produce Spanish MotoGP commentary, and he decided to pursue four-wheeled racing as well. He would compete in the Porsche Italian Carrera Cup and the Porsche Super Cup for the next 2 years, his best result being 8th in the Italian Cup and 15th in the Super Cup. In 2024, he competed for Team Lazarus in the Italian GT Endurance Championship, finishing the season in 20th. From here on out, not only are all of the riders still racing in the championship today, but they have also all won a Moto2 or Moto3 championship, meaning we've talked about them before, but I will still cover their careers since they won their first title. First up is Marc Marquez. Marc Marquez won his first MotoGP title in 2013, his rookie season, and he is still racing 12 years later, making him the first current world champion on our list today. He would stay with Repsol Honda for the vast majority of that time, winning the championship every year for the rest of the decade with the exception of 2015, when he came in third behind Lorenzo and Rossi. 2015 was also the year when the schism between himself and Rossi formed, and this is something that has shaped the way that annoying people watch MotoGP ever since. Regardless, after dominating the 2010s, he was expected to do the same in the 2020s, until a heavy crash would force him to end his 2020 season after just one round of competition. The next few years were a nightmare of injury problems, and an increasingly uncompetitive and borderline unrideable Honda machine would greet him every time he came back from his latest injury. Eventually, Marc made the decision to leave Honda. He would ride for Gresini Ducati in 2024, and despite some inconsistencies, the Emperor found his groove, turning in 3 wins and 10 podiums and earning himself a factory Ducati seat, a seat that he's contracted to until the end of 2026. He is currently the World Championship leader in 2025, and when he keeps the bike on 2 wheels, has looked nearly untouchable so far. Joan Mir became the first champion not on a Honda or Yamaha since Casey Stoner when he won the 2020 World Championship aboard a Suzuki. He would continue with the brand until their departure from MotoGP at the end of 2022, finishing 3rd in 2021, but struggling with retirements and injuries in 2022. He would move to Honda in 2023, and since then he has found very little success with the notoriously difficult to ride 2020's RC213Vs. Crashing out of what feels like almost every race and struggling to find the pace when he does stay on the bike. He is contracted with factory Honda through 2026. Fabio Quartararo became France's first Premier Class champion in 2021. The following year, he took a massive lead in the championship, only to lose it in a late championship run from Francesco Bagnaia. He has remained with Yamaha, whom he won the title with ever since, and has struggled to find the pace over the past 2 years. Although in the past few races of this season, he has returned to form somewhat, and taking a massive lead in the British Grand Prix before a heartbreaking technical failure left him out of the race. He is contracted to remain with factory Yamaha through 2026. After taking the title from Quartararo in 2022 and delivering Ducati their first championship since 2007, Francesco Bagnaia has spent the time since becoming the most successful Ducati Grand Prix rider ever, racking up 30 Premier Class wins, winning the 2023 MotoGP Championship over Jorge Martin, and taking the 2024 fight to the final round before losing by just 10 points. He is still contracted to ride with factory Ducati, having a ride with them until 2026, although he does appear to be struggling a bit this year. But that being said, he's come back from greater deficits from this before. Finally, last year's world champion, Jorge Martin. Martin became the first rider of the MotoGP era to win a title on the satellite bike, winning aboard a Pramac Ducati GP24. Due to drama between himself and Ducati, he left for factory Aprilia. He has struggled quite a bit with injuries this year, leading him to only actually riding the bike in 1 round at Qatar, and since then has allegedly expressed his interest to leave the team. At the time of recording, the MotoGP world is still holding its breath, waiting to see where its most recent world champion will end up in 2026. And that brings us to today. Pretty much every single one of these riders has continued on with racing in some way, many of them going on to race cars, many of them racing motorcycles and other international events, and some choosing to manage MotoGP teams instead. Regardless of what they choose to do, every single one of them has undoubtedly earned a spot in the history books, and I can't wait to see who else will be added to this amazing list of names in the future. The YouTube algorithm has been not liking me much recently, so if you want more content like this, please drop a like, subscribe, and leave a comment to boost this video and get it to more people's pages. Thank you very much for watching, and a special thank you to my channel members. We got MVP 2112, Venturian CRO, Sean, Motosapien, B, Jack the World's Fastest Maori, Drew Gibbs, Really Very Bored One, and Carl Ruppersberg. Thank you all for supporting the channel, it really helps. And thank you everyone who watched the video all the way through. I hope you have a fantastic day.